As a reminder of my history with comics, I got into them via Nightwing and the Teen Titans. For the longest time, I stuck with just Titans-related material, but by the time of Identity Crisis, I had started expanding into reading other titles and characters, and I got into Cassandra Cain's solo series thanks to reading trade paperbacks at Barnes & Noble before I started a shift at work. I was a frequenter of forums at the time, where we would discuss comics coming out, and the release of this stuff inspired the fans. In particular on a forum for a website called Super Dickory. Super Dickory at the time just chronicled old weird Silver Age covers with Superman on them where he was acting like an asshole, because that's how the Silver Age rolled. But the forums talked about all sorts of comic stuff. In fact, a post on the forum advertising a certain caustic critic's review of Batman and Robin was what informed me of his existence. And, well, here I am. So yeah, people pissed about not only Cassandra Cain, but various other jerky things done in the DC universe, caused one fan by the name of Espanolbot to create a webcomic, Cass Toons. It was basically an editorial strip. Sometimes funny, sometimes just complainy, but basically Cassandra Cain was mad about how she was treated and talked about it with other characters. It was that weird metaspace where characters are still their own characters, but they were also actors performing as their own characters. You know, the kind of thing that I engage in nowadays with this show, so you can see why I gravitated towards it. They're primitive, obviously, originally made in MS Paint, later pixel art, and eventually hand-drawn stuff. Most characters sharing a similar body template with details added because it wasn't meant to be some great artistic exercise. It was just fans expressing their dissatisfaction. And yes, I mean multiple people. While Espanolbot created the majority of it, scripts were submitted all the time by other fans and were written in. Hell, I participated in it too. I recall in particular making one related to Danny Chase when a Booster Gold issue referenced him, as well as recently unearthing a Word document I wrote with a storyline about all of Steve Ditko's characters coming together to uncover a conspiracy against them. It was cathartic, having a place where like-minded fans could really sink their teeth into it and keep each other appraised of efforts to try to fix Cass and other characters who had been screwed over. It was not without its downsides, of course. Like I said, not all of this stuff was really that funny nowadays in hindsight. And we complained about what we saw as trends, like, oh my god, kill a classic hero and replace them with a non-white version. Grr, hate, the industry is dying because of this. It's a bit of personal shame for me because I used to think like that. It's immature and dumb and just wrong. Cassandra herself could fit that description after all. It's why I don't take complaints like that seriously. I heard it before 15 years ago, and it was wrong then, and it's wrong now. If the mainstream comic industry is dying, and while I tend to be cynical and say it's dying, there have been years where sales figures go up overall for the industry. It's not because of stuff like that. It's because companies don't know how to handle change, how to try new tactics to bring in new readers instead of doing 50 crossover events per year. Or, as my lengthy introduction specified, how to sell their own damn books. But yeah, Cass Toons were not perfect, but they remain a part of fandom culture that I'd like to think really helped convince DC to overturn what had been done to Cass, bring in new fans of her character, and just provide a fun outlet for disgruntled readers like any kind of fan fiction or the like can. And while I regret and wince at occasional things expressed in it, I will always love the running gags of Cass being a big Bon Jovi fan, and the portrayal of then executive editor Dan DiDio as the phantom dictator of Crankcore. What can I say? I'm a sucker for MST3K references. But yes, the decision was made to fix Cass. But not before Beechin did some more character assassination, of course. Come on, Alfred, this is The Clash. Classic punk. Punk is nothing but death and crime and the rage of a beast. Damn right. I mean, how would Bruce react if he heard you listening to punk rock, Tim? Hey, is that The Clash? My God, Bruce, what's next? Are you going to be talking about having lunch with your good friend One Face? Amusing as that is, there is another moment that fans naturally were mad about. Tim asks Bruce about the whole Robin is just a distraction for Batman thing, and he shoots that idea down.
And if the best Cassandra could do to drive a wedge between us is criticize your costume color, that's just proof of how disturbed she is. I mean, that weirdo Cassandra, am I right? Glad I never put any kind of emotional investment in her, nor would I be concerned about her well-being or anything.
Before they fixed Cass, she did make a few more appearances in Robin and over in the pages of Supergirl still as a villain, but nothing really of note. Her redemption, if you can call it that, came in the pages of Geoff Johns' Teen Titans book. Geoff Johns sits near an open window at midnight, and a light breeze hits his arm. He raises his head towards the night sky and proclaims, "I sense there is something I can retcon." By the by, the Geoff Johns Teen Titans book is another thing I might do a retrospective on at some point, because man oh man, is that a series with some highs and lows, and I do love me some Titans. But anyway, long story short, Deathstroke's son Jericho gets resurrected, and Deathstroke decides to assemble a team of villains to take on the Titans, calling themselves Titans East, because the Teen Titans were based in the West Coast at the time. Ostensibly out of a want for revenge for the team constantly taking his family away from him. One of the members is Cassandra Cain, back in her Batgirl outfit. It also features this hilariously terrible shot of Raven. And normally I like Tony Daniels' artwork, but for crying out loud, why didn't nobody stop and say, maybe the teenage girl's clothes should not be so tight that we can see her ass completely form-fitting to it? There are a lot of dumb but funny things about this era. I'm particularly fond of Tim Drake's little bat cave he made near Titan's Tower, which is supposed to mimic the Jason Todd Robin costume in a glass case thing, but has the normal clothes of his dead father and mother. But let's get to Cass. We see at the end of this first part of the storyline that Deathstroke has been injecting Cassandra with a serum, specifically the same one that enhanced Rose Wilson's own strength and speed. That was also driving her insane. Yep, Cass's out-of-character murder and talking and League of Assassinating was, in fact, the result of mind control and chemical-induced insanity by Deathstroke, probably as revenge for how the Bat family took him down in Infinite Crisis. And that's why she can write and speak Navajo. Wait. Fortunately, Tim has an anti-serum handy, just in case it was needed to be used on Rose Wilson, and injects her with it. It restores her mind, for the most part. Sadly, as a result of Rose having a different physiology, plus being messed up in general by all this, Cass declares she's going to kill Deathstroke in revenge for all this. The other former New Teen Titans show up to help our heroes fight Slade's group. And it should be noted that Adam Beechin actually came in to help with the story, probably because he was taking over the book from Geoff Johns for a few issues before a new permanent writer came on. Said issues ended up being the tie-ins to Countdown and Amazon's Attack, so I have nothing but pity for him there. I've got to imagine he was just begging to be part of this so he could make up for what happened in the Robin issues. It's not great, but not entirely terrible. The artwork didn't help. Very rushed and uninteresting, which is especially bad since it's the big fight scene finale of the story, and it all takes place on a desolate beach with, like, a weird green gradient sky. Is there a big storm coming? Did someone slip the sky some Listerine? Why is it green? And I'm still not sure what the hell is going on in this panel where Cassie leaps at Deathstroke and he just scoots to the side. Anyway, Nightwing decides to stop the woman who's still recovering from her mind control and probably isn't thinking clearly from all the abuse and trauma the best way he knows how. Punching her unconscious. Sorry, Cassandra, but I can't let you kill him. He has to face a court. You know, back on the Super Dickory forums, we called this Nightwing's magical fist of morality. Both Slade and Batgirl flee, and it turns out Deathstroke did all this to make sure that his children had a real family taking care of them instead of his evil ass. Yes, to ensure that my children never have to deal with my evil again, I will assemble a team of supervillains who want to murder them, then kidnap them and abuse them, get my ass kicked by them, and then lose Batgirl as part of whatever my plan was with her. I don't know, maybe controlling her was always part of this plan, too. I deserve a Father of the Year mug, damn it! So yeah, not a great recovery for Cass, but at least it was an explanation, and Beechin was given another chance to fix things for Cass. In a 6-issue miniseries, Nightwing spots Cassandra in the Batcave working and gets into a fight with her, not trusting her. His dialogue implies that a murder she committed over in Robin's book took place after the Titans East stuff, but that really makes no sense. Then again, the first issue of the mini is poorly assembled like that. There are like 4 or 5 pages of exposition, and yes, that's bad comicking, especially when, as you can see, it's just a single page with paragraphs and paragraphs of text. Counterpoint though, I don't care. Beechin was trying to fix the continuity and characterization mistakes he made and fill in the plot holes, and that deserves more credit. Most writers wouldn't even bother, but he actually made the effort, and that deserves kudos. Poorly laid out as it is. Basically, after the events of her solo book, Cass came back to Gotham while Bruce, Tim, and Dick were on their little cruise around the world post-Infinite Crisis. By night, she fought crime, but by day, she was taking speech and ESL courses with the help of Alfred. With his help, she was able to start doing better with writing and talking, explaining how she could speechify so much to Tim. However, Deathstroke found her, drugged her, and suggested she take over a cell of the League of Assassins, not the actual whole thing, and poisoned her mind with the whole "Grr, Cain raised other children" thing. The pistol that was used on David Cain was rigged by Slade. It didn't kill him, and he escaped, having cooked up the whole scheme with Slade, so the two could set up shop with Cassandra to create assassins. The counter serum Tim injected her with was a short-term solution, and if she hadn't run off after the Titans East thing, they would have been able to purge the drugs from her system, but they didn't. After the whole murder thing in Robin, the drugs finally cleared her system and she was restored to normal, and naturally feeling pissed and horrified by what she had done. David Cain has disappeared along with all the assassins, including other sisters that Cain had fathered and raised in secret, and Cassandra is in the process of trying to hunt them down. Nightwing still thinks they're full of it, because his name is Dick after all, and he has the magical fist of morality, so he totally knows what's best. Unfortunately, he's kind of right. Cass is indeed in her own mind again, but the guilt and shame over what she's done is so much that she feels she can only get closure if she kills Cain and Deathstroke. And honestly, it's a plot idea that I understand. Bear in mind, during her solo series, there were moments where she teetered on the edge, ready to kill. Recall that in one issue, a hallucination of Batman dying was all it took for her to be ready to take a life. It's choosing not to that makes her better. She holds no illusions that she'll still be with the Bat Crew after doing something like this, but she feels she has to anyway. She teams up with another of Cain's children, who goes by the name Mark, who's on a quest to kill Cain too. Oracle also contacts Cass, since she's already figured out what she intends to do. She won't try to stop her, but she does plead with her not to, that she can be a part of the Bat family again. That's really what the miniseries is about. Family. Family you make. Family by blood. Family in arms together. Even Alfred early on points out that maybe a lot of this could have been avoided if they had treated Cass more like a part of the family rather than just another crime fighter alongside Batman.
Well, yeah, sure, but does she listen to the Clash? I think not, Alfred.
Eventually, she manages to track down Cain and confront him, and we truly see the depth of his abuse as he lays into her. Because the truth is, anyone who would do this to their own daughter, that's not love. He only always saw Cassandra as a means to an end, and was disappointed she didn't turn out like he wanted. Because it wasn't her he was proud of, he was proud of his own work. Remember, abuse is not about love, it's power and selfishness. Even during the solo series, where it is shown many times that Cain seemed to love her, those same abusive tendencies were there. Mailing a knife to her on her birthday when he knew full well what she thought of killing and what it meant. It's a power move, meant to say, I am a part of you and I always will be, and you can never get away from me. When he was talking to a scientist about childhood languages and the idea of teaching a child only to communicate via body language, he smiled about it because of what he had achieved. It was about his success, his plans, his ideas. Sure, he may have shown affection, may have genuinely cared about her. It's hard not to when you spend so much time with someone. But it's not love, not real love. Love is about putting someone else before yourself. And he never did. This? It's abuse. It's evil. And that's what David Cain is. But yeah, Cass defeats Cain while he rants about her failure, all that he had done to try to make her so great. And of course, she points out that he never asked her what she wanted. To read, to talk, to have a family and somewhere she belonged. She almost lets him die by falling off a building, tries to justify it in her mind as not killing him, just failing to save him. But in the end, she does try to save him, and that's good enough for Batman and Robin, who had been after her thanks to Nightwing's little paranoid grumblings. In the end, Batman admits that there's definitely a mistake he made that he wants to make up for. Officially starting adoption proceedings for her. And then Batman died in Final Crisis. Although admittedly, I'm not really sure how adoption proceedings really work when she's like 19 or so at this point, but whatever. The Batgirl miniseries is decent. I think it really does come together in the final issue, but it feels kind of meandering for the first few, not helped by the clumsy writing. I'm also sorry to admit that I've never really been a big fan of Jim Calafiore's artwork. It's not terrible, but his faces are always very samey, especially since they look like they're kind of wincing or tightening up as if they're glaring at something. When he tries to draw people smiling and happy, it rarely feels natural and just feels like he wants to smush their faces in again into a perpetual scowl. But anyway, the miniseries itself I think is overall pretty good, and we definitely need to stop trying to punish Adam Beechin for a mistake he made under less than ideal circumstances. He's done more than he ever needed to try to make up for it, and he hasn't worked on the character since then. We're not done though. Still more stuff happened with Cass. During the miniseries, there was also another Outsiders book being published at the time, and Batman invited Cass to join in, ostensibly to take his place should he die, which, happened with Final Crisis. I mean, technically he wasn't dead, he was just time traveling and in a cave because of Darkseid's Omega beams, and God, I chose a confusing hobby. Nothing really major to say about the Outsiders book, other than it was pretty good during its early days. Even involved space zombies shooting a laser at the moon, no doubt to spell chairface on it. In the wake of Batman's apparent death and some other stuff that happened, the team disbands, but Batgirl attempts to keep it together by creating a network of people who could reflect Batman's own skills in one way or another, called upon when they're needed. Alfred does point out, though, that a lot of the people on her list seem to be seeking out redemption just like her. Nightwing confronts her about it, being all pissy that she's recruiting people like the Riddler, reformed at the time, or Vigilante, basically DC's answer to the Punisher. He even tries to attack her because that is Nightwing's magical fist of morality at work. However, Alfred gets Nightwing to see reason, and the two agree that the idea has merit, but it's best if Nightwing takes over the arrangements since the superhero community trusts him more. Which is why we then see Alfred being the one taking up the task, and not Nightwing, as part of final instructions left by Batman.
Great continuity!
So as I've mentioned before, Stephanie Brown wasn't actually dead. Long story there, but she was indeed alive and was brought back into the fold. To try to placate fans of both Cass and Steph, the decision was made to hand the Batgirl costume over to Steph, and Cass would become a part of Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated initiative. I'll talk about that in a second, but basically the two are fighting side by side, or back to back in this panel, and Cass admits that she's been thinking a lot lately about the fight, and that it's not her fight anymore, especially in light of Batman's apparent death. She hands the Batgirl costume over to Steph to use as she sees fit, and ends up heading over to Hong Kong. She at first just engages in combat with no codename, though strangely looks very similar to Scandal Savage from Secret Six. This is in the pages of Red Robin, yum, because DC was remembering yet again that Kingdom Come existed, and using some of the future codenames and costumes from that. Red Robin is Tim Drake, who abandoned the Robin moniker over to Bruce's son Damian. With Bruce back to life again, Tim does hand the Batgirl costume over to her in case she wants to come home. She keeps it, but accepts that it's Steph's identity for now. So let's talk Batman Incorporated. It was an initiative started by Bruce in order to have Batman in basically every country on Earth. Cass takes on a new identity as part of that. Thus, she is the Batman of Hong Kong. Or rather, to simplify any conversations, Black Bat. Her outfit is basically the Batgirl outfit, but a Kamina mask and a tattered cape. Which makes sense, Cass is as awesome as anything in Gurren Lagann. As the Black Bat, she rescues Tim from being sexually assaulted by one of Ra's al Ghul's daughters for very convoluted reasons relating to carrying on the bloodline or some such crap, and he agrees to help her track down a child serial killer known as the Cricket. They fail to defeat him, but he promises to come back. Oh man, I'm really looking forward to that. Hope we don't have any reboots that get in the way of such a thing. Before the New 52, there was a final appearance by Cass, the miniseries Gates of Gotham. It's a solid story, highly recommended, and I think really puts Scott Snyder on the map for his Batman run, though credit should also go to co-writer Kyle Higgins, who would go on to become one of the best writers for, of all things, Power Rangers comics. The story concerns the history of Gotham's major wealthy families and the architecture of the city itself. Cass joins up with the rest of the Bat family in Gotham to investigate a mysterious, almost steampunk-clad bomber who wants to bring the city down. We get some fun interactions between Cass and Damian. Damian's an arrogant little snot who was raised by the League of Assassins, so naturally he gets all territorial about Cass and her reputation and connection to the League. She takes it in stride, even rescues him from a bomb, but Dick Grayson, as Batman, uses her body-reading talents for discerning things useful to their case based on footage of the villain. She decides she's going to return to Gotham, and then Flashpoint and the New 52 happened. Despite Damian, Tim, Jason, and Dick Grayson all surviving the reboot and all being Robin despite Batman only operating for about 10 years, most other supporting Bat characters got the boot, Cass included. Must have made the higher-ups happy that they didn't really have to acknowledge anyone who was a fan of hers anymore because, hey, reboot! Before we get into how she was brought back, one interesting thing to note was that Gail Simone actually had plans to use Cassandra in Birds of Prey. It was all in the works, but then she lost the character at the last second due to editorial mandate. It happens. She was given the task of coming up with a fresh direction for her to try to get more people interested in her. As such, she decided to try to examine Cass with religion, an aspect of the character that hadn't really been utilized before. She helped save a minister who had a dark past but was at peace and had converted to Christianity, and she finds a kindred spirit in him, slowly becoming a Christian herself because of the peace from violence that it gave her. She'd even take on a white Batgirl outfit and focus her efforts on helping the downtrodden. It's an interesting direction, would have been fun, but that's what happens with a shared universe, and it wasn't to be. What did happen was DC Rebirth, aka DC apologizing profusely for the New 52 and trying to fix it and reintroducing a bunch of characters who had been screwed over by it, including Cass, and then screwed a bunch of them over again recently because comic book companies like to get drunk and piss all over the goodwill that they've created. She's reintroduced just before Rebirth in a weekly series called Batman and Robin Eternal, itself a sequel to another miniseries called Batman Eternal, which had brought back Stephanie Brown as Spoiler, with a pretty similar origin. We're only going to talk about the broad strokes here because it's fairly recent stuff and the trades are still out there, plus because I had to condense this 4-part retrospective into 3 parts and it's still coming out the month after it was supposed to. Stupid, more popular side project and demon voice thing. I really recommend this run for the character, starting with it. I think it's great, though the fans have a bit more of a mixed opinion on it than I do. At the time, Bruce had lost all memory of being Batman, effectively killing him again, which means that he and Cass are probably tied now for how many times both have died and been resurrected. And the story concerns mostly all the rest of the Bat family. They're on the trail of a human trafficker who goes by the name Mother, along with her most trusted agent, Sterling Archer.
Oh, second worst birthday ever.
What? How is this better than your second fake 50th?
Criminy, she even looks like Mallory Archer. Anyway, Mother is not just some random slaver. She's in the business of custom people, molding and reshaping them for whatever a buyer wants. In particular, she does this to children. And that's where Cass comes in. Instead of being a part of the League of Assassins, David Cain worked for Mother under the moniker Orphan and helped create Cassandra as the ultimate assassin for her. Instead of murdering some random gang boss, Cassandra was sent to murder the parents of a girl named Harper Row, who would later in life become another Batman sidekick named Bluebird. Like with the gang boss, after killing Harper's mother, she realized how wrong it was and turned away, instead joining up with Batman to help expose and take down Mother's operations and master plan, a toxin developed by Scarecrow that instead of instilling fear, would instill trauma, creating the perfect way to create new servants to bend to her will by manipulating the artificial trauma. They defeat Mother and stop her plans, Cass adopting her father's codename of Orphan since, well, Barbara is still Batgirl in the New 52 and Rebirth. Cass taking on the name of her evil father is a point that many people dislike about her in this, and I get that. I would have given her the Black Bat name again, but it doesn't bother me so much that it detracts from the story, which is very, very good. This continues into Detective Comics, in a truly stellar series of stories by James Tynion IV in the book. After Batman gets his memories restored, he wants to start training the next generation of heroes in Gotham. And Lord knows there are plenty of them. Cass is among them, but more shockingly one of their number is Clayface, who's trying to reform and get the psychological help he needs to be a normal person. He and Cass form a friendship over the run until it's tragically cut short by Batwoman killing him. Long story there, but the important point of it is that Cass rips the Bat logo from her uniform in light of her doing so, saying of course that it stands for something more than what she did. Different codename, different history, but she still respects the Bat. Not enough to use it in her superhero name, of course. That'd just be silly. Although Bat Orphan does sound kinda goofy. Due to events in the series, one thing that's made clear to Bruce is that Cass needs proper healing for her trauma and past, not just to keep fighting like she has been. Just have Shiva kill her and punch her back to life again. That worked pretty well before the reboot. What's more, Brother Eye even makes a reappearance in the story. And yes, it's pre-New 52 Brother Eye. Well, sort of. It comes from an alternate future from the pre-New 52 timeline, and okay, bad marketing is one reason why comics are dying, but this convoluted explanation is another. Anyway, to try to discourage Orphan and Spoiler, it shows the two images of the pre-New 52 universe, the two both taking on the mantle of Batgirl to try to show them how they're weaker now than they used to be. But it just encourages them more to try to be the best they possibly can be. In the end of Tynion's run, Cass retires from superheroing and works with Barbara to try to start being good at regular everyday life stuff. And you know what? If Cass's story had to end, I'm okay with that. Certainly no one has earned a retirement more than her after all this crap. If actions speak louder than words, then the story of Cassandra Cain is deafening. Cass was born to be the ultimate villain, the ultimate killer, the assassin who none other could rival. But she is the reminder that destiny is not something handed to you, but what you make for yourself. Cassandra Cain rejected the evil intended for her in any of her incarnations and made herself into an agent of justice and redemption. Creators didn't always get that. The higher-ups at DC certainly didn't get that. Just another side character to be discarded when the status quo needed to be restored. But the fans never forgot. They made sure that even if Cassandra Cain herself didn't have the words to speak up for herself, that they would do so for her. She lives up to the ideals of Batman, possibly even more than he ever could. Maybe she wasn't the best at everything, not the greatest computer genius, or the one who could give Sherlock Holmes a run for his money in the detective department, but she knew that the Bat was a promise, to fight evil to her last breath, and to right wrongs when she saw them, to never be like the person who took away his parents. Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, the one who is all, daughter of destruction, Black Bat, Orphan, all those names, but there's only one important title to really remember about her. Hero. At the time of this video's release, they've announced a new graphic novel for Cass set during her Batgirl days. Hopefully it'll happen, and hopefully it'll be good. But even if it isn't, Cassandra Cain is always about redemption.
This is where I came in. They know not what they do. Forgive them all their sins. That comic books
Oh, and next time, US 1. Let's go back to single issues for a while, okay? I'd like the show to actually be released on Monday again. Jeez.